Welcome to Wichita Liberty TV with Bob Weeks.
Hello, I'm Bob Weeks for Wichita Liberty TV, your weekly source for news, analysis, and commentary about Wichita and Kansas government and public policy. We're broadcast on KGPT, channel 26.1, also the companion website, kgpt26.com. Some of you may know me for my blog, The Voice for Liberty. That's on the internet at wichitaliberty.org. And there the motto is individual liberty, limited government, and free markets in Wichita and Kansas. So I cover things that may not be covered by other news media, or if we do cover the same news, I'll do it from the perspective of economic freedom, limited government, and individual liberty, as these are the things that are important. And these are the things that we find so often under attack by our government, be it at the federal, state, or local level. So, please visit wichitaliberty.org. You can subscribe to the email newsletter I send 2 or 3 times a week. And if you'd like to contact me, you'll find my email address there, or just remember bob.weeks@gmail.com. Well, a novel transportation service worked very well for me on a recent trip to Washington, but Wichita doesn't seem quite ready to embrace such innovation. Well, have you heard of Uber and similar services? On its website, Uber says it is evolving the way the world moves. By seamlessly connecting riders to drivers through our smartphone apps, we make cities more accessible, opening up more possibilities for riders and more business for drivers. From our founding in 2009 to our launches in over 70 cities today, Uber's rapidly expanding global presence continues to bring people and their cities closer. Well, Uber works like this. If you want a ride, you use your smartphone and the Uber app to request a ride. And drivers who have undergone an application process and background check, drivers acknowledge your request and pick you up. And when the drop-off is made, payment is handled through the Uber app. Well, my first trip using Uber was a few weeks ago. I needed to travel from Dulles International Airport to my hotel in downtown Washington, D.C., which was a pretty long trip at nearly 27 miles. And my Uber fare was $59.50. Now, that's expensive, no doubt. And my hotel's website listed cab fare, they estimated it to be $60. A private sedan would have been $90 with reservations required in advance. So it seems like Uber is priced about the same as a regular taxi cab, but there's a big difference. The Uber fare is all-inclusive. Now, the way I elected to pay with Uber, and which I suspect is probably the easiest way, was to store my credit card with the Uber system. And as we approached my destination, I asked my driver if I could add a tip through the Uber app. Well, he said no, there's no need for that. And as he transferred my luggage to the hotel bellman, it seemed awkward not to offer a tip. But I confirmed with DC natives that's the way it is with Uber. No tipping. Yeah, no tipping. Isn't that refreshing? Aren't you tired of cab drivers extorting tips? But then you may be asking, what motivates Uber drivers to offer good customer service? Well, one factor is that customers rate their drivers through the smartphone app. And an intriguing factor is that Uber drivers also rate their passengers. Also, an Uber customer service representative followed up regarding my trip. And another thing, my Uber drivers seemed to like their job. They took pride in their clean cars and amenities. And what service it was. There are several levels of Uber service. I used Uber X, which is the least expensive. Other Uber services available in some cities include luxury cars or SUVs. And on my 3 Uber trips, the 3 cars I rode in were a Toyota Prius, a Lexus, and a Volvo. All were impeccably clean, both the cars and the polite drivers. On all 3 rides, I was offered a bottle of water. 2 cars had magazines for me to read. One had a bowl of wrapped candy on the seat next to me. Drivers asked if I was comfortable with the setting of the air conditioning. And they weren't blasting their radios, as has often been the case on some of my cab trips. In short, the Uber service was great. And while the Uber fare was the same as what my hotel estimated for a taxi fare, remember there was an important difference: no tip to the Uber driver. No need for cash, no need for a taxi driver to fumble with an awkward method of accepting credit cards. And a neat receipt was available on the Uber website and also in my email. Whenever I've asked a regular cab driver for a receipt, I've just received a blank form for me to fill in. Also, I had an estimate of the fare before I requested an Uber driver. In my case, the estimate was $60, with the actual fare at $59.50. And remember, no tipping. Uber is a neat service. So, can we get Uber here in Wichita? Well, recently Uber and Lyft, which is a similar service, they both started operations in Kansas City, Missouri. And nearly immediately, that city council passed additional regulations that make it tougher or maybe impossible for these services to operate. In Wichita, it's certain that Uber would be in violation of city ordinances. In 2012, the city passed new taxi regulations which erect and enforce substantial barriers to entering the taxicab market. Some of the most restrictive include these. Drivers must work for a company that has a central office staffed at least 40 hours per week. A taxicab company must have a dispatch system operating 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. A taxicab must have enough cabs to operate citywide service, and the city has determined that is 10 cabs, and a supervisor must be on duty at all time that cabs are operating. Well, did you hear that? A dispatch system. That's 1950s technology. Uber and similar services use smartphones. No dispatcher needed. No central office required. When you request a ride with the Uber app, you see a screen showing the available drivers nearby, along with an estimate of when the driver will arrive. And you can watch the driver's progress towards your pickup location. Now, can you do that with Wichita's cab companies with their supervisors and dispatch systems? Well, Wichita has implemented regulations regarding the hygiene and local knowledge of taxi drivers, these regulations enforced by bureaucrats. Now, how is Uber regulated? Well, first, there are the customer ratings, which are a powerful force. Then, provided with Uber receipts is a map of the route the driver took to deliver riders to their destinations. If riders are concerned that drivers are padding fares by taking roundabout routes, well, that's easy to see and resolve. And in fact, the Uber dashboard lets riders request a fare review. Can you imagine how difficult that would be in Wichita to prove that your driver padded your fare or extorted a tip? Regulation by bureaucrats or regulation by customers. There's a difference, and Wichita is served by the least effective of these, thanks to our city council. To top it off, while Wichita has regulations regarding the personal hygiene of drivers and the cleanliness of their vehicles, the city fell short in protecting customers from something really important like violent crime. After the city passed the new regulations, a passenger was raped by a taxicab driver. The Wichita Eagle reported the driver should not have received a taxi license because the new change banning registered sex offenders was not communicated to staff members doing background checks on taxi driver applicants, city officials told the Wichita Eagle. The city has fixed the problem that led to the oversight in this case, they said. So in Wichita, the regulations regarding customer service training were implemented, but the really important regulations? Lack of oversight, says the city. Which leads us to wonder, who was regulating the regulators? Now, if an Uber driver committed such a crime, the company would undoubtedly be held liable and experience a loss of reputation. But how do we hold city bureaucrats accountable for their regulatory failures? So, will Wichita consider relaxing taxicab regulations so that Wichitans might be served by a superior service like Uber? Not likely, I would say. The City Council is proud of the new and restrictive regulations. And Wichita is served by 3 taxicab companies, with 2 of them having the same owner. These companies are likely to lobby aggressively against allowing Uber and similar services in Wichita, just as taxi companies have done in other cities where Uber has started operations. And recent discussion about the future of transit in Wichita have not included services like Uber. At last week's City Council meeting, Councilmember Janet Miller, that's District 6, North Central Wichita, she spoke about baby boomers who may soon be aging and either can't drive or don't want to drive. Yet, she said, they have disposable income and want to spend it. Well, these are ideal customers for Uber. Now, Uber and similar services might not be a total replacement for traditional city bus transit, but it could help many people and could provide needed competition to the city's taxicab fleet. But it doesn't seem likely that we'll see Uber here in Wichita soon, if at all.